Hey everybody, I'm Sam Menser with the Chattanooga Public Library. I serve as the recording studio instructor and manager at the downtown location. Um, Today I want to address some questions that seem to crop up quite a bit in the studio, and they revolve around different signal levels and also different cables and connectors that pertain to those signal levels. So hopefully I can clear up some of these questions. Uh, Starting out, let's talk about signal levels just specifically. And signal levels have both um, an output and an input that they need that you need to think about when you're looking at signal levels. So starting out, we're going to talk about mic level, which is the lowest signal level that you're going to come across in the studio. Microphone level, and that's exactly what this microphone is sending right now when I'm speaking into it. It's a mic level signal. It's very low. It needs a preamplifier. So in the studio, you'll plug your microphone in with an XLR cable, and then go into the wall, and then that goes behind the scenes through the patch bay. But ultimately, it ends up in a preamplifier. And in that preamplifier, the signal will be boosted to a higher level signal that we're going to talk about in a little bit, that then carries it throughout the rest of the system until it hits the converters and is changed into binary code. And at that point, we're in the digital realm. So we're talking about analog levels here. The next level up is going to be instrument level, and you're going to find that on guitars, electric guitars, and on like electric basses, things with pickups. Now, this signal level is higher than microphone level, but it still requires a bit of a preamplifier boost to get to that next level, which is called line level. Line level signals you can find in most pieces of equipment that are powered. And what I mean by that is like you plug them into the wall. So a keyboard, for instance, also like if you wanted to sample something from a record player that would have a line out, and that record player is powered. So that's a line level signal. Most of the time, these signal levels are named appropriately and they're easy to understand what level you're using. Then one up from there, the next level is quite a bit up in voltage, but that's going to be speaker level, which you won't really need to worry about in the studio because you're not going to be unplugging and plugging in speakers. Just know that that is the highest level. So those are our three levels. We're really looking at microphone level, instrument level, and then up from there, line level. And how this can be confusing is the naming conventions on certain pieces of equipment can sometimes confuse people. For instance, you might have a piece of equipment, like I have an interface here that accepts the first two inputs, accept both either microphone level or instrument level. Either of those work, and it's marked mic/instrument. The preamplifiers at the studio downtown, you can plug electric guitar and electric bass straight into there into a quarter-inch input that's actually marked high Z, HI-Z. And this actually is shorthand for high impedance, which is another name for instrument level signals. So you can see already instrument level can be also known as high Z. Well, also some pieces of equipment, like this old interface I have here on this blue bank of inputs right here, is marked guitar. So the designers of this, this is a propeller head balance. It's an old desktop interface. Decided to go with guitar as the instrument input name. Also on here, you can see there's mic level, and those are distinguished by the three-prong inputs of an XLR. And then there's also two banks of line level inputs. So I can hook two keyboards up at a time to this. I could have a guitar and then also a microphone and switch between the two to record them. And then finally, at the end, you have your output, which is going to send speaker level. So that being said, instrument level is definitely the most confusing when it comes to your inputs and outputs on equipment. And to confuse matters more, when we're talking about cables, there is also a cable that is widely known as an instrument cable. Now, this does not mean that it is carrying instrument level signal. It just is sort of called that because you use it with instruments. And I'll try to clear this up. But here, if you look at it, this cable right here is a common instrument cable. There's a tip, and then there's the sleeve here. And you can see there is a ring right here, but there's only one single ring. Comparing that to this very similar looking cable, we have that tip, and then there's two rings. So this instrument cable is correctly known, or more, I guess, appropriately known as a tip sleeve cable, whereas this very similar looking one with the extra ring is known as a tip ring sleeve cable, so TS or TRS. Now, there's a big difference between these two types of cables, and that is that this instrument cable / TS cable is unbalanced. This tip ring sleeve cable is balanced. Why is this important? Well, a balanced cable can effectively eliminate any type of noise that might interfere with that cable, especially on long connections. Instrument cables are usually going to be shorter, so they don't need to be balanced because you're just plugging a guitar into an amp, or you could be plugging your bass into an input on a interface or on a preamplifier, things like that. Now, longer instrument cables are susceptible to noise. So what we want to use in pro audio to connect, say, the output of this interface to some speakers would be that tip ring sleeve balanced cable. Now, what you would use to plug in your instruments to the different inputs here would be, you could use your basic tip sleeve cable, your unbalanced instrument cable. Now, where this can be confusing is looking at inputs on preamplifiers or on interfaces and things. So my interface that I have here at home is marked with an instrument input. That does not mean that I can take a keyboard, which is sending line level signal, and use an instrument cable and plug it in an instrument input. So you have to think that inputs and outputs are labeled at the level of that signal that they are either going to accept or they are outputting. Whereas cables can carry various levels of signal, but have naming conventions that are a little bit different. They usually, it's the best way to do it is to just instead of calling it an instrument cable, call it a tip sleeve cable or a TS cable by looking at it, and that's how you can identify it. And those are going to signify whether they're balanced or unbalanced. Speaking of balance, we also have our Xlr cables, which have the 3 prongs that carry a balanced signal level, and most of the time you're going to find that you're going to use these for microphones. Now, that's not to say that they only carry microphone level signal. That's not true. They can carry line level signal as well, and some other signals that are more advanced that you're not going to run into in the studio. But for instance here, what you have to do if you're in a studio situation is almost you're reducing signals to then boost them again later. And this comes into play if you want to connect your keyboard, a powered keyboard, to a preamplifier in the studio. What you'll need to do is actually come out of the keyboard using a TS cable, an unbalanced cable. Now remember, you're at line level. So what we need to do is actually use what's called a DI box or a direct injection box. and it's basically, I don't have one here, but at the studio we have these little green boxes, and they're marked DI box, and it transforms the level of the signal from line level, and it reduces it to microphone level. That way, we can take an XLR balanced mic level output and take that into our system, and then boost it with the preamp. So you're actually taking a hotter signal, reducing it to lower, and then boosting it with the preamp. So you can see that this can be quite confusing, and I'll post a chart here so you can kind of see some of the differences here in these situations. I know that that's a lot of information, but if you separate the two ideas of signal level and match those with inputs and outputs, and then you look at balanced and unbalanced cables and identifying them by their connections and thinking about the length and when you would use these different types of cables, balanced versus unbalanced. It can be quite confusing, but I have faith in everybody, and once you get the hang of it, you'll understand, and you won't make mistakes like I have in my past, where I plugged a line level output keyboard into a guitar amplifier that was expecting a instrument level. So you won't cause any electrical fires if you learn this information, and be careful when you're plugging in things. All right. I hope this has been helpful. Appreciate you watching. Take care, everybody.